Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And welcome to Leadership Begins with Motivation. First of all, I want to thank the Hotel Community Forum and the Senior Community Forum, as well as Liz Wozniak for putting this all together. She's great. She's positive energy. And I made a decision I was sharing with her earlier a couple of years ago just to get rid of all the negative noise and just surround myself with positive people. I'm also very blessed. I work with Laleen Dunn. She's a great human being, and she helped organize all this. So thank you, Laleen, for putting this together. And most importantly, thank you. You're giving me the most valued asset you have, your time. So I'll do my best to make sure it is time well spent. So I always like to start off by telling people about my beliefs. I believe that everybody can learn. I believe that the best teachers are always people that are constantly encouraging us every single day. And most importantly, I believe that learning should always be fun. If you agree with any of those statements, type an amen into the chat right now. Come on, do it. Type in an amen into the chat. I can't see the chat, but I guarantee you Liz can see it. So give me my Southern Baptist, give me an amen. All right, then we are gonna have fun today. So my friend Bob grew up in a steel town in Western Pennsylvania. And when he became a teenager, Bob started to develop an attitude. He hung out with the wrong people, the bad crowd. He started talking back to his parents, and he was starting to fail out of school. And his father had just had enough. And so his dad took him to the steel mill one Saturday, and for 10 hours, Bob said he thought he was in hell. It was 150 degrees in there. He was sweating. He was miserable. And it was at that moment that Bob looked at his father with a totally different set of eyes. He thought to himself, this man works here 6 days a week. He's done this for the last 25 years so that a person like me and my brothers and sisters can go further in life. And as he was thinking that, Bob's father put his hand on his shoulder. He said, you know, Bob, I know, son, that life's been getting kind of tough for you lately. And I just wanted you to know that I spoke to my foreman. And he said, whenever you want, you have a job guaranteed right here in the steel mill. Bob says to me, this is the single most motivational statement he has ever heard, because he got his act together real quick. And so that's what I want us to remember today, is that leadership begins with motivation. So today we're going to talk about the roles of motivation, perspiration, and inspiration. Why those three things? Because of the psychological rule of 7 plus or minus 2. Harvard did a study. By the way, whenever I cite research, I always say Harvard did the study. It sounds much more legitimate that way. So Harvard did a study. They found that the typical human being can store 7 pieces of information in their short-term memory, plus or minus 2 pieces of information. So what I want us to get out of today's talk is that leadership begins with motivation, but then it continues with perspiration. And the best form of leadership is when we lead with inspiration. And so I always like to get to know who everybody is. So everybody right now, look at your pretty reflections on the screen right now and repeat after me. I am pumped to be here today. I'm guessing you're saying that right now. Now say it aloud. I look marvelous. You better say it or I'll get us singing the rest of the day. All right, everybody give yourselves a big hand. Life is too short. There's so much negativity in the world, folks. We need to laugh. We need a lot more laughter in the world. So I always tell this, no matter what kind of leader you are, no matter what you do, you're always a teacher and a role model first. So now you're wondering, who is this guy? Well, my name is Danny Brassell. My last name is really easy to remember how to spell. It's spelled like Brassell. No, I never took any grief over that as a child. And I'm on a mission to bring joy back into the workplace. Now, I've actually taught all ages, from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. Now, I became a teacher because of the movie Stand and Deliver. Raise your hand if you ever saw the movie Stand and Deliver. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's the true story of Jaime Escalante going to Garfield High School in East Los Angeles to teach AP Calculus. So I said, I'm going to be Jaime Escalante. So I was originally hired to teach 12th grade social studies in Compton, California. It's a community in South Central Los Angeles. And they switched me from working with high school students to middle school students to upper elementary to lower elementary to pretty soon, instead of preparing students for college, I was coming home with snot marks all over my pants from the little ones hugging me all day. The first thing I learned is what works with a 12th grader does not necessarily work with a kindergartner. But what works with a kindergartner works with all age levels. The second thing I learned was perseverance. Raise your hand right now if you've ever been in a negative environment, surrounded by negative people telling you what you couldn't do all the time. I mean, one of my first principals, Mrs. Lucifer, she used to fly into my classroom every single day on her broomstick with her perma-scowl and her foreboding clipboard, and she used to write me up for everything she thought that I was doing wrong. She was killing me, but I had a guardian angel. I was blessed. I taught at a school where I was the only man at my school. I was the only white person at my school. I taught with predominantly elderly African-American women from the South who all had been teaching for at least 20 years. Well, my first mentor was a woman by the name of Mrs. Turner. Mrs. Turner had been teaching for 40 years. Mrs. Turner was from Alabama. She believed in two things, discipline and the Bible. Whenever her little ones got out of line, she started reading aloud Revelations to them. And it was Mrs. Turner, this saint, this incredible human being, this incredible leader, who took me under her wing, and she taught me a system on how to bring joy into everything that I do each and every day. And so hopefully during our limited time together today, I'll be able to impart some of her wisdom on all of us. So by the end of this presentation, I want you to walk away with your head held up high in the sky. I want you to leave here today feeling refreshed. I want you to leave here feeling like you can tackle any challenges that life throws you at any time. Are you ready? All right, I know you're shouting, hang on. So people react in different ways when they're asked to lead. I mean, some people like to cry about it. Some people get angry about it. A lot of people just feel overwhelmed all the time. So the question I ask people is, what kind of leader are you? Are you the type of leader who leads by force and intimidation? Or maybe you're the type of leader who leads by persuasion, or maybe even better, you're the type of leader who's constantly leading by example that you give to others. You know, my friend Joe Martin, who's a wonderful speaker, he has a philosophy about how to become a transformational leader. He calls it napkin leadership. And it's something I love, because when you go to a restaurant and they give you the napkin, is your first reaction to stuff it down your shirt and to wait for others to serve you? Or is it to put it over your arm so that you can serve others? I've never liked the term servant leadership, because by definition, a good leader is always there to serve others first. And that's what I want us to remember more than anything. And that's why leadership begins with motivation. And so I had 3 conditions that I want us to review on the role of motivation, beginning with condition number 1. First of all, you got to find your joy. Why do you choose what you do for a living? I mean, maybe you choose to do it because of the unlimited wealth opportunities that it presents you. Maybe you choose to do it because you love getting to interact with happy customers on a daily basis. Or maybe, just maybe, you do it because you love it. The question I always ask people is, are you a Friday employee or are you a Monday owner? Now, let me explain the difference. The Friday employee cannot wait for that clock to end on Friday afternoon so they can go home. Happy hour cannot come soon enough for this person. This person is ready to drink. And folks, I get it. A lot of us get to that point. But we got to remember this. People don't need Friday employees. We need Monday owners. The Monday owner can't wait to get back and start inspiring the people around them. But first of all, you got to find your joy. How many of you got joy? I mean, people find joy in different things. I mean, maybe you find joy bathing in ice cream. Maybe you find joy in the clothes that you choose to wear. Maybe you find joy in your work. Joy is all around us, and it begins with you. Can I teach you a trick I used to teach my little ones when I was a teacher? This is called the 2-finger trick. Everybody take out your index fingers right now. I hope you're doing this, okay? Put them on the sides of your mouth. Okay, now push. Ah! People smiling again. There's so many miserable people out there. Most of them watch the nightly news every day. Don't be afraid to enjoy what you do. You got to think big. Anita Roddick, the founder of The Body Shop, said, if you think you're too small to have an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito. I need people thinking they're going to infinity and beyond. Ted Turner said, a leader is someone who creates infectious enthusiasm. What are you doing to infect the people around you with your enthusiasm? Well, Harvard did a study on this. The following photo has 2 identical dolphins in it. It was used in a case study on leadership at St. Mary's Hospital that's in Boston. Now look at both dolphins jumping out of the water. The dolphins are identical, but a closely monitored scientific study of a group of participants revealed that in spite of the fact that the dolphins are identical, a superior leader could actually find differences in the 2 dolphins. Now, if there are many differences found between both dolphins, it means that person is a transformative leader on the brink of greatness. So I want you to look very carefully at this photograph right now. All right. Oh, I knew when you joined us today, there were some pretty amazing leaders out there. You're headed towards amazing success. Everybody give yourselves a hoot and a holler. Woohoo! Gosh, I miss live events, but we're making do with Zoom. I'm learning how to do all this. And so again, the first condition and thinking about motivation is to find your joy. That leads to the second condition, which is that your attitude makes or breaks you. Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can do a thing or not, you are right. You got to get the people believing in a believer's mindset. Are you an Eeyore or are you a Tigger? I'm a Tigger. My wife is an Eeyore. I come home from work. I'm like, hey, honey, how was your day? And she's like, thanks for noticing me. I'm very curious to see how our children turn out. You know, when I was teaching, I used to ask my colleagues, why are my students so hyperactive? It's because I'm hyperactive. One day I showed up to school, I had the flu. I looked at my students, I said, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brassell has the flu today. For the love of God, please take it easy on me today. And guess what the kids did the rest of the day? They worked quietly. They shared with one another. They were kind to each other. And if that was not a miracle in and of itself, the fact that I had that flu bug for the next 150 school days was even more miraculous. Who are the more successful leaders, the optimists or the pessimists? It's the optimist, obviously. You know, if at first you don't succeed, try and get it. Some kids get it immediately. Some people take some till April to get it, but everybody, where there's a will, there's a way. There's a way to get through to every single person. You got to keep your eyes on the prize. Focus on what your team members can do. I'm going to show you a photograph. You look very carefully at this photograph. This photograph of the board of directors of Microsoft in 1978. That's Bill Gates in the lower left-hand corner and Paul Allen in the lower right-hand corner. I want you to stare at this photograph right now and ask yourself one question. Would you have invested? Now, I want you to remember this photograph. Next time you're looking at your team, I want you to see the potential that is in that room. So 4 axioms to repeat after me. I refuse to be afraid of enjoying myself and my work. I know you're saying it right now. Good. Second one. My team feels my passion. You saying it? They're never going to say it. You never say it. Third, I do not have to scowl for people to take me seriously. And finally, I'm excited to be here. Excellent. So the second condition that we have to consider to motivate ourselves as leaders is that our attitude makes and breaks us. And that leads to the third condition, which is to model excellence. Remember why you entered your profession? I mean, the more I work with different companies nowadays, I find a lot of people are starting to feel hollow inside for why they do what they do for a living. You got to figure out what's your motivation. I mean, perhaps you've had a lot of caffeine and that's what motivates you every single day. Perhaps you're motivated to learn more, like this poor woman I saw on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. On the $100 question, they asked her, which of the following is the largest? A peanut, an elephant, the moon, or a kettle? Visa really needs to do a commercial on this woman. Brand new dress, $200. Round trip airfare to New York City, $500. Telling a national television audience that an elephant is larger than the moon, priceless. This is why we really need to make sure our teams are doing really well. I mean, hey, perhaps you're considering a better job than your current one. You think you got a tough job. There are people with some really tough jobs out there. Now, I'm always interested in studying motivational theories. And so I like to read a lot of motivational theory textbooks because I don't have much of a social life. And of all the motivational theories I've ever come across, my favorite was proposed by this dude. His name was Abraham Maslow. And Maslow was interested in answering the question, what makes successful people successful? So to answer the question, he only studied successful people. He studied people like Albert Einstein, Frederick Douglass, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Helen Keller. And of course, the cast of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. No. He would never study anybody like this because Maslow discovered in his studies that when you surround yourself with people with a negative philosophy, you start to adopt that exact same philosophy. I don't know if Maslow knew this, but Harvard actually did a study on this. Did you know that over 70% of medical students in the United States in their third year of residency start to develop symptoms of the diseases that they're studying? We need to keep it real. It all begins with us, folks, as leaders. We need to model excellence. And so one of the characteristics I've always seen in successful leaders is successful leaders are always reflective leaders. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 17 seconds right now in the chat right now. I want you to type in which of these conditions you're going to make your priority after today's presentation. Your 17 seconds begins right now. And Liz, if you want to read them to me, go ahead. Liz will be the voice of God right now.
I'm going to wait to see if people start shouting. Okay, so we got model excellence. So far, model excellence. Okay, joy, getting some joys. Lots more joys. Joys is the winner so far.
Perfect.
Model excellence. Nobody's put down number 2 yet.
Well, what
Mostly
I love
joy.
the most, though, Liz, and I appreciate all of you for
One number 2.
Okay. What I appreciate the most is that all of you chose one. Really, one of the things that changed my life was I read a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. You don't have to read the book. I already read it for you. There's one thing that totally changed my life. In that book, he said that the word priority in Greek can only be used in the singular. And that changed my life. Every single day since I've read that book, I give myself one priority. I have to get that done. I can get other stuff done also, but I have to get the priority done. There's a little tip for all of you. If you give yourself one priority every day, you'll get more accomplished than by trying to do 20 things on your to-do list. So thank you for all that participation. So that leads to the second part of leadership, which is the role of perspiration. There's 3 actions I think that all of us have to take as successful leaders, beginning with the most important thing that successful leaders are constantly doing in their actions is building relationships. One of my mentors, Zig Ziglar, used to say, you can get anything you want by helping others get what they want. It was either Socrates or Bobby McFerrin who once said, don't worry, be happy. I go around this country, there are so many people that fear their job security nowadays. Folks, don't worry, there are jobs out there. I've seen them all around. You got to avoid the naysayers. What do they look like? They look like this. I believe that one bad apple does spoil the bunch. I used to teach with a woman, Miss Washington. She was sick one day. I'm like, Miss Washington, how long have you been sick? And she said, in 3 more weeks, it'll be a month. This is the single most negative person I've ever encountered in my life. You got to watch those toxic people, folks. They're out there all the time. Harry Warner in 1927 said, who the heck wants to hear actors talk? Later that year, The Jazz Singer was released as the first talking motion picture, changed movie history. At his acceptance speech for the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1923, Robert Millikan famously said, "There's no likelihood man can ever tap the power of the atom." Less than 20 years later, we had atomic energy. One of my favorite quotes of all time came courtesy of Charles Duell. He was the head of the US Patent Office. In 1899, he famously said, "Everything that can be invented has been invented." You got to surround yourself with positives, folks. Listen to the happy radio station on the way to work. True story. My first day as a public school teacher, as I was driving into the school parking lot, the very last song on the radio was Pink Floyd's The Wall. We don't need no education. Freaked me out. From that day forward, it was Christian rock every single day. You know, how many of you study willow trees? What, I'm the only person who subscribes to Willow Tree Weekly here? Oh, you can learn a lot from willow tree. Harvard did a study. This is fascinating. So there's these willow trees that were being devoured by caterpillars. And scientists discovered the willow trees were sending a chemical in the air to warn other willow trees about the caterpillars. These other willow trees would then create a new chemical in their leaves that made their leaves distasteful. Thus, the caterpillars wouldn't attack these willow trees. So basically, these willow trees saved the lives of all the other willow trees. Wow. We could all learn a lot from a willow tree. When was the last time you saw some bully popping off and you didn't step in to do something about it? That's what leaders do. The leaders say something. The leaders do something. Now, do you find yourself doing this at the end of your workday every single day? Well, don't worry, folks. I'm here to help. Everybody take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath out. There are 3 steps to happiness. If you want to take notes on these, you may. Step number 1 requires that you get 2 rubber bands and 2 paper clips. Step number 2, you need to tie the rubber bands together, attach the paper clips to the ends of the rubber bands. Step number 3, you need to get that smile plastered on your face. Oh man, when you show up at work, do you find everybody's excited to see you? Or do you find that people tend to avoid you most of the day? When you speak up in meetings, do you find people are excited to hear the sweet chirp of your voice? Or are they annoyed by your constant caw all the time? Do you get your way by pushing others around and intimidating them? Are you wise and kind and patient? You know, my friend John Lisa Pancic, she has this wonderful expression. I'm liberating it from her. I never steal an idea from another person. I liberate their ideas and share them with other people. She says, "Who's going to hold your rope?" Oh, I love that. If there's one thing that human beings have proven throughout history, it's that you can do anything you want in this world on your own. But why do it on your own when you can bring others along for the ride? And so that first part of perspiration we got to focus is on what are we doing to build the relationships of our team, making everybody around us better. It leads to the next action all of us need to take, which is to learn constantly. I've learned, I need to learn from everybody. I think it was the UCLA basketball coach, John Wooden, who used to say, it's the things you learn after you know it all that make a difference. Now, before I was married, I used to have a speeding problem. I have a lead foot. And so I used to spend most weekends in traffic school. I really like traffic school. You get to really meet interesting people in traffic school. And one Saturday I'm in traffic school, and the guy to my right just did 20 years in the state penitentiary. Shaved head, little mustache, tattoos everywhere, baggy shirt, baggy pants. The guy on my left, excuse me, geez, I have a frog in my throat. The guy on my left was a brain surgeon. He was like 6'3", wearing a 3-piece suit, spoke just like Stone Phillips. And I'm ashamed to say this, folks, but I made some judgments about both of these guys at the beginning of the day. Shame on me, because by the end of the day, I thought the ex-con was the coolest and wisest person I'd ever met in my life. First of all, he knew every law in the book. He's like, hey, Danny, man, that ticket you got, that's California Criminal Code 503C, man. You go to this judge, you'll get off. I mean, I was writing notes like crazy. He knew every law. It was amazing. But that's not what made me love him. What made me love him was there was one part in the day where the teacher, she made us each stand up and we had to share with the group our biggest pet peeve about other drivers. And so some people stand up and say, I hate it when people change lanes without signaling. And some people stand up and say, I hate it when people don't come to a complete stop at a stop sign. And she gets the ex-con and he doesn't stand. He's like, nothing. The teacher, she's like, no, sir, please stand up and share with the group what annoys you about other drivers. He leans back in his chair. He's like, nothing, man. Ain't nothing nobody else does that I haven't done before. Holy cow. That might be the wisest statement I've ever heard a person say. I love how holier than thou all of us are. You know, oh, I can't vote for that person. That person lied. Oh, we are such hypocrites. You know, always remember, leaders, that when you're pointing at others, you got 3 other fingers pointing back at you. It all starts with me. You know, it's amazing. I've learned this. I've done lots of different things in my life because I can't hold down steady employment, but the most rewarding has always been teaching. And I started off as a secondary teacher, but I really found my passion was with the little ones, because they say amazing things. And this beautiful little girl, Maya, she comes up to me at recess, so excited one day. She's like, Mr. Brassell, this is Anjanae. Anjanae's Nikisha's friend. Nikisha is my friend. So that means Anjanae's my friend too. Think about that for a moment. What a lovely way to look at the world. I definitely want to build more teams just like that. You know, I've learned almost every important lesson in my life, not from corporate executives, but from kindergartners. You know, I had a little girl, they got these amazing ideas. They look at the world in a totally different way. We ignore them constantly. I had a little girl, Maria, 5 years old. She's like, Mr. Brassell, where does it say Humpty Dumpty's an egg? It doesn't. Nowhere in the nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty, does it ever say Humpty Dumpty's an egg. But there's always a picture of an egg. How did I miss that all those times? Tyrell, 6 years old, one day, raised his hand. He's like, Mr. Brassell, is Curious George a monkey or an ape? And I laughed until I reread the book. How many of you have read Curious George? And if you're not raising your hand, you obviously don't have a kid, because every kid needs to hear Curious George. Well, what does the man in the yellow hat call Curious George? My little monkey. Where's his tail? He doesn't have a tail because Curious George ain't a monkey. He's a chimpanzee. I've read that book 3,000 times, missed it every time. Tyrell got it the very first time. You know, that's why if I'm ever murdered, I want a first grader on the scene, not my wife. First grade would be like, he's approximately 6 feet tall, dark jacket, dark pants. My wife would be like, I don't know, I think he's this tall, I think he's white. You know, it's the Gladstone-Disraeli paradox. Winston Churchill's mother, Jenny, was a contemporary of Queen Victoria. She knew every important person in society. And a reporter asked her once about the difference between Prime Minister Gladstone and Prime Minister Disraeli. Her response was phenomenal. She said, well, whenever I left a meeting with Prime Minister Gladstone, I left feeling like, wow, he is the most interesting person I have ever met. But whenever I left a meeting with Prime Minister Disraeli, I left feeling like, wow, I am the most interesting person he has ever met. What are we doing every day to make our teams, our customers feel important? See, you got to remember that you got to learn constantly is the second action to take every day. And then there's the third, which we have far too little of nowadays, which is to be accountable. You know, I call them excuses. Whether I was working with students or companies or teams, I always say the next time you have to give me an excuse, I just want you to say, Peru has a new dictator. So all of you say that right now. Peru has a new dictator. And people say inevitably, what's that got to do with anything? I'm like, well, one excuse is as good as another. It didn't get done, did it? So don't waste my time. I know people that'll take twice as long coming up with the excuse than actually just doing the task. Drives me nuts. Would you like to know Yoda's secret to leadership? It is do or do not. There is no try. That's how Yoda talks. Okay, so I have to plug my book. So I'm going to read to you a chapter from this lovely book, Leadership Begins with Motivation. I think you'll get a kick out of this quick little story. This is from the chapter on realization. On the morning of January 17th, 1977, Gary Gilmore, in a plain t-shirt, strapped into a chair with a bag over his head, awaited a firing squad of 5 law enforcement officers to execute him at the state prison in Draper, Utah. Convicted of murdering a gas station employee and motel manager in Utah the year before, Gilmore would be the first person in the United States to be executed in nearly a decade. Shortly before his execution, prison officials asked Gilmore if he had any last words. Neither he nor anyone else that day would know the impact of those words. Over 10 years later, in 1988, Dan Whedon, an advertising executive who co-founded the Whedon and Kennedy Agency in Portland, Oregon, made something of a morbid pitch to a struggling fashion company. He recalled the inmate's final words and used a slight variation for his pitch. And seemingly everyone hated his idea for the company's new slogan. Just trust me on this one, Whedon implored the company's co-founder. And the co-founder, his company, and the public have not looked back since. The co-founder's name was Phil Knight. The struggling brand he co-founded was a shoe company called Nike. And advertising executive Dan Whedon slightly altered death row inmates Gary Gilmore's final words, "Let's do it," into the phrase, "Just do it." You know, when you're working with your team, I do this all the time. I speak with lots of speakers who like to call themselves thought leaders. And I always love that expression, thought leader, because we don't need your thoughts, we need your results. So let's be results oriented and let's be action leaders, not thought leaders. Never say you can't do it. Find out how you can do it and then decide whether it's worth the cost. You know, there's 2 types of people in this world. I don't know versus I'll check and see. You don't want anybody that's an I don't know on your team. You need people that are willing to check and see. Are you an excuse maker or a problem solver? I was working with a bunch of first grade teachers one day, and they're like, "We teach the poor kids. They got nothing to read at home. My back hurts. Wham, wham, wham." Drives me nuts, people like that. I took them on a field trip to Barnes & Noble back when we could actually go to bookstores. I took them to the travel magazine section and helped pull out all these 3x5 cards, help the first graders fill them out. 3 weeks later, kids are like, "Are you going on the Caribbean cruise or the Alaskan cruise?" Hey, there's a way to get reading materials into a poor kid's hands. You know, an underprivileged kid has the same rights as anybody. You just got to think a little bit. I don't think outside the box. That's too outdated. I think all over around the box all the time. James Earl Jones, Helen Keller, Jim Abbott, John Walsh, Jeannie Quack. Any of you know who James Earl Jones is? One of my personal idols. Like me as a child, he stuttered. Now he's like the voice of God. Do you know James Earl Jones uttered 3 of the most expensive words ever said in the English language? You know what those 3 words were? "This is CNN." He gets a royalty every time that airs anywhere in the world. He's made over $250 million on those 3 words. Helen Keller. Any of you know who Helen Keller is? Next time you want to gripe about how tough you've got it, I encourage you to read The Miracle Worker, because you'll read about one of the most amazing individuals ever to walk on the planet in Helen Keller, plus the leader, her teacher, Annie Sullivan, who had the patience to work with her. That's what good leaders do all the time. And if you know who Jim Abbott is, if you're a baseball fan, you might. He pitched for the New York Yankees. He pitched a no-hitter, an incredible feat for any professional baseball player, especially Jim Abbott, because he was born without an arm. He just had a stump. He put his mitt on his stump in between pitches. Any of you know who John Walsh is? In the early 1980s, John Walsh's son, Adam, was murdered brutally. I'm a parent. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. What did John Walsh do with all that anger? he took that anger and he created the show America's Most Wanted, which single-handedly captured more people on the FBI's Most Wanted list than any other program in history. Jeannie Quack, any of you know who Jeannie Quack is? You know, Jeannie grew up in Singapore. At the age of 12, she took a test that labeled her as not proficient in math and science. And so she was not allowed to take a math or science class throughout middle school or high school. So at age 18, she emigrated to the United States. She went to LA Valley College for 7 years, earned a scholarship to the University of Southern California, where she graduated with honors. Taking what classes? Math and science. It's one of the reasons I married her. She's an extraordinary human being. Now, the most successful people in the world are not the ones who follow the rules the best, but those who take the most risk. I said that just now. You may quote me. Translation, you can't hire other people to do your push-ups. Talk is cheap. You got to do the work. And so again, let's do some work right now. I've always said that the most successful leaders are reflective leaders. So I'm going to give you 18 seconds this time. I want you to consider these 3 actions to improve your leadership. Type in the chat right now, which one of these 3 actions are you going to make your priority when you leave here today? Your 18 seconds begins right now. And Liz, if you could be kind enough to read to me what people are saying, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely, Danny. Okay, I'm getting accountable. Be accountable is the most consistent right now. I have 2 build relationships. But definitely be accountable looks like the forerunner. Oh, 1 learn constantly just came through. Okay, so we have 1 person that's oddball out with number 5 right now.
I love that. I love that, Liz. Thank you. And accountability is so critical, folks. It's something I don't know why people feel like they don't have to take responsibility for their actions anymore. But if you really want to be inspired by a true leader, look at the people that are constantly accountable for their actions. I love that so many of you are saying that. Well, let's conclude. I want to talk about the role of inspiration, which is really taking it to the next level for any leader. So there's 3 characteristics of inspirational leaders, beginning with humbling ourselves. I've always thought that the mark of a true leader is the person that humbles himself. There's a great book. A lot of people think it's good. I think it's great. And it says that you should treat other people the way you want to be treated, and you should constantly be humble in your actions. Now, a lot of people don't know this about me. I'm actually a weight loss expert. I have lost over 1,000 pounds. The problem is I've gained over 1,220 pounds for a net gain of 220 pounds. But my latest fad diet has been working wonders. May I share it with you? So for breakfast, I'll typically have half a grapefruit, a slice of whole wheat toast, and 8 ounces of skim milk. Whole milk will kill you. Now, for lunch, I'll typically have 4 ounces of lean chicken. I'll have it with either steamed zucchini or maybe steamed broccoli. I'll down it with a cup of herbal tea because Harvard studies have shown that speeds up your metabolism. And then just to reward myself for doing so well, I like to treat myself to an Oreo cookie. Now, for my mid-afternoon snack, I typically eat the rest of the package of Oreo cookies. I'll have a quart of Rocky Road ice cream and a jar of hot fudge. Sometimes I pour it on the ice cream. Usually I just drink it directly from the jar. And for dinner, I'll typically have 2 loaves of banana bread, large pepperoni pizza, pitcher of beer, 5 Milky Ways, and an entire frozen cheesecake eaten directly out of the freezer. I have a bad habit. 2, actually. I overeat, and I like to eat junk. Raise your hand if you have a bad habit. And those of you not raising your hands, your bad habit is you're a liar. I am so blessed to have a bad habit because I learned a whole long time ago. It's a whole lot easier to create a good habit than to break a bad habit. Leaders, our job is to create good habits in our teams. You know, whether I'm teaching little ones or older ones, as people end with me, I always say the same thing. Remember, education is valuable, but execution is priceless. Knowledge is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. Knowing what the right thing to do and doing the right thing are 2 different things. So go out, be your best, and do the right thing. So let's see if I got risk takers or rule followers with me joining to me today. So let's see if you can follow these 4 simple rules over the next 27 seconds, beginning with rule number 1. Do not think of a black dog. Rule number 2, do not blink. Rule number 3, do not yawn, 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 or yawn. Rule number 4, do not look at the word below. All right, I'm going to give you 9 seconds right now in the chat. I want you to type in the chat how many rules you were able to follow. Give yourself a score of 0 to 4. Type it in the chat, and please, folks, be honest. I'm going to give you 9 seconds now.
I'm seeing some zeros, 3 out of 4. Somebody said followed rule 1.
Well,
1, 0, followed 3 of 4. I personally followed 3 of 4.
Well, good. So let's see how you all did. Let me tell you all how you did. If you were able to follow all 4 rules, what part of be honest don't you understand? If you scored a 2 or a 3, excellent effort. In your world, rules rule. If you scored a 0 or a 1, you've complete disregard for authority, convention, tradition, and civilized norms. You're bound to achieve leadership greatness. Most great leaders have to break a few rules along the way. I always emphasize this to people. You got to fail faster to succeed sooner. I was doing a corporate training a couple of weeks ago with a bunch of executives. I asked, what's the opposite of success? They all said failure. I'm like, no, it's not. To succeed, you need to fail a lot. The opposite of success is not trying or quitting. You know, a lot of people remember that Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs in a single season, an amazing feat. A record that stood over 30 years in Major League Baseball. Most people conveniently forget he also led the league in strikeouts the same year with 89. I, for one, want my team swinging for the fences every single time. And folks, we got to learn to laugh at ourselves. Why? Because you ain't all that, and neither am I. And if you think you're all that, teach kindergarten for 1 week. They'll set you straight. I was teaching my kindergartners one day. I'm like, LaShonda, question. She's like, Miss Brassell, when are you going to trim your nose hair? This afternoon. Thanks for bringing that to my attention, LaShonda. I ain't all that. And so, again, I've always thought that the most inspirational leaders inspire others by humbling themselves every single day. At least to the next characteristic of inspirational leaders, which is to pay attention. I always tell my team, I'm looking for thermostats, not thermometers. What's the difference? Thermometers take the temperature. Thermostats set the temperature. What kind of climate are you creating with your team to help them succeed every single day? Raise your hand if you ever had one of those days. Raise your hand if you ever need to get pumped up. Raise your hand if you ever feel overwhelmed. Well, besides speaking to you today, people always ask me, Danny, can you help me? And the answer is totally yes. I wanted to make sure all of you had something to take away today. So if you just email me at danny@dannybrassell.com. Remember, Brassell, very easy to spell. I'm going to send you all a complimentary copy of my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed. It's a book where once a week I give you a positive concept, an inspirational quote, an inspirational story, a book recommendation on a book you should read, but you're probably too lazy because you're an adult. So I also give you a children's picture book that demonstrates the same concept. You know, I can tell you this, that the most effective leaders are always avid readers and they're constantly learning. And so people ask, why do you do that, Danny? I'll tell you why. Good leaders make a difference. We need you. So everybody, look at your lovely reflection on the screen right now and repeat after me. Thanks for all that you do. Then I want you to repeat after me. You look like a Monday owner to me. Excellent. And so I want inspirational leaders that are constantly paying attention. That leads to what I think is the most important characteristic of an inspirational leader, which is to leave fingerprints. How many of you have ever seen the movie Grease? It's been around for a while. In the movie, John Travolta plays a guy named Danny. And Danny has a hots for Sandy, played by Olivia Newton-John. And Danny finds out that Sandy likes jocks. So John Travolta goes to Sid Caesar, who just happens to coach every single sport at this high school. He tries out for the baseball team, he stinks. Tries out for the basketball team, he stinks. Tries out for the wrestling team, he stinks. Eventually, he tries out for track and field. And not only is he good, he's good enough to earn his varsity letter. Watch that movie again. What an amazing leader. Sid Caesar never gave up on that kid. He found something that kid was good at. All of our team is good at something. It's our job, it's our responsibility to find that in them and to let it shine every single day. One of my favorite speakers is a friend named Ken Blanchard. You ever have a chance to watch Ken? He's incredible. Ken was talking to a grocery store chain. All 10,000 employees were in the audience, from the CEO all the way down to the baggers. And he challenged his audience. He said, what are you doing to leave your fingerprint on your job so people remember you long after you are gone? He got everybody pumped because he's a great speaker. Well, one of the people in the audience that day was an 18-year-old bagger named Johnny. Johnny had Down syndrome. And Johnny left that conference being all inspired and excited. So when he got home, he went to his computer, started typing out every funny joke and saying he had ever heard, printed them out on his computer, cut them out. Next day when he went into work, every time he bagged a bag of groceries, he put one of his jokes in the bag of groceries. Fast forward 1 week. Grocery store managers walk on the floor. There's 4 lines open. 3 of them are empty. One line has 20 men and women. He's like, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, there's 3 other lines open. And they look at him. They're like, yeah, but this is Johnny's line. I thought that was great, but that wasn't the best part of the story. Floral department notices what Johnny's doing. So floral department starts greeting every elderly woman that enters the store with a complimentary flower. Now, if I was a woman, I'd be like, who you calling elderly? But that worked for them. Wait a second. Meat department notices what floral department's doing. So meat department starts putting Mickey Mouse stickers on every packaged meat that they sell. Again, I ain't gonna buy meat with a rat sticker on it, but it worked for them. This was the best part of the story. In 1 month's time, this tiny grocery store in Missouri was the #1 store in the United States based on volume. And it all started with Johnny. As a coach, I've looked at every single one of my team members every single time. I'm like, it only takes one person to make a difference. And I believe it's you. Sometimes you need somebody else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. I believe in all of you, all of you. You know, leadership begins with motivation. We know that you have to take action and use perspiration. The best leaders are constantly inspiring us every single day. No matter what you do, remember, you are always a teacher and a role model. I like something that Michelangelo once said. He said, the greater danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it. Your team is going to accomplish precisely what you think they're going to accomplish. So why don't you set your sights high and be dazzled as they reach for the stars. Translation: stay positive, stay safe, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. And I believe we have a little bit of time. Actually, I think we got 12 minutes. Good. I went a little bit over, but we got about 12 minutes for question and answer. I'm not going to take this off. We have another speaker in a couple of weeks, Peter Sage. Man, I want to join that one too. Peter looks great. So Liz, open it up for questions. If people want to join us right now for questions.
All right, so I have 2 that came in. I'll let and see other people that might be putting in questions now. Everybody, please just share your questions in the chat. But I will start out with one that I already have. So what if being joyful at work bugs people? How would you handle an employee that won't give up the negativity?
Stay away from those people. I stay away from those energy suckers, you know, and then so I'm not going to put that person at the front desk if they're one of those energy suckers. Those are the people that go in the back room, and that's fine. Everybody's a little bit different. I know not all of us. I'm definitely a positive person. I'm a Pollyanna. If you ever saw that movie Pollyanna, where she's like, one Christmas I wanted a dolly, and instead I got crutches, and I thought, how lucky I am not to need these crutches. You know, some of us always see the positive in everything. And so, well, you're going to have those Debbie Downers. But just because a person's a Debbie Downer doesn't mean they can't make a very positive contribution to your team. You just don't want them out in front of public relations. So figure out what they're good at and let them do that.
Let them shine on the backside, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's the truth. I mean, some people run for office and some people run the campaign. And those are 2 different types of, and they're both strengths. Both strengths, Liz. It's a great question. Thank you.
Perfect. And let me look. Okay, another question. How do you know the right level of joy to use in times, especially like crisis? How do you be the best leader to understand the balance of the situation?
There's a great book I think all of you should read called, well, you don't have to read it because I read it. It's called Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. And this is a true story of President Lincoln. When President Lincoln was elected president, he took all of his political rivals and he made them his cabinet. And this is not an overstatement. It would be the equivalent of President Trump naming Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. this is what President Lincoln did. And these guys hated Lincoln's guts at the beginning of the term. And by the time President Lincoln was assassinated, they were all inconsolable. Edward Stanton, the Secretary of War, said, "We've lost the greatest leader ever." Lincoln had one of my favorite quotes of any politician. He said, "I know the best way to defeat my enemies. I shall make them my friends." And if you ever saw the movie Lincoln, the Steven Spielberg movie, it says it's based on the book. I think maybe 4 minutes of the movie are based on the book. But one of the things that Lincoln was great at was diffusing tense situations, and the way he always chose to do it. And all of us are different types of leaders. So I knew long ago that I love getting people to laugh and lightening people up. We're gonna get our results, but that's the way I lead. People are different types of leaders, but I lead through humor. And President Lincoln was very similar. When he was a country lawyer, they say that people would come from 20 miles out of town to the local pub because President Lincoln, before he's president, he would stand by the fire and he would tell stories. Now, he did the same thing with his cabinet during the Civil War. And so, they show it wonderfully in the movie. There's this great story where in the Civil War, they're trying to determine if they have to do this battle, and the Secretary of War is like, "Oh, this is a horrible moment." And Lincoln just kind of says, "Well, the founding father, Ethan Allen," and Stanton's, "No, don't tell me a story. This can't be." But he's always able to diffuse the situation. So the story he tells is Ethan Allen, when he was called to be an ambassador to Britain, the British decided they were going to poke fun at him. And so in the latrine, they had posted a painting of President Washington. And so they played cards, and eventually Ethan Allen had to go do his business in the outhouse. And when he came back, all the soldiers were laughing, and they're like, "Did you see the picture of President Washington in the latrine?" And Ethan Allen said, "Why, yes." And the soldiers were taken aback. They're like, It didn't insult you?" He said, "Why, no. Every American knows the sight of George Washington scares the crap out of the British." And so he would say that, and like, how do you not like a guy that's doing that? How do you not love a person like that? I love sports analogies, and one of my favorite coaches of all time was Jim Valvano, the basketball coach for NC State. And people say that he always had a story for everything. And he was having problems with his team. And so he was talking about the first year he was a coach at NC State. He said that he lost to North Carolina, their rival, twice. And an alumni booster came and said, Coach Valvano, I don't know what they think of basketball in New Jersey, but in North Carolina, we take it serious. And Valvano's like, "I know you take it seriously." "No, I don't think you understand, Coach. You've got to beat North Carolina." He's like, "Yeah, I understand." "No, I don't think you understand, Coach. If you don't beat North Carolina next year, we're going to kill your dog." And Valvano laughs. He said, "I don't have a dog, but I get it." And so the next day he wakes up and he goes to get his morning paper, and on his doorstep is a basket, and in the basket is a puppy, and the puppy has a ribbon on its neck that says, "Don't get too attached, Coach." And how do you not love a person that gets you to laugh at a situation like that? And so that's where I think the joy, diffusing. There's serious problems in the world. There really are. But I made a decision long ago. I'm gonna diffuse those situations with laughter rather than sadness. I like happy endings, not the sad movie. The sad movies are for my wife. I like the happy ones. Long answer to a short question, Liz. I apologize.
No, it's a good answer. I mean, I'm the same way as you personally. I always think of everybody else's feelings and wanting to make them laugh. Like, I'm most happy knowing I'm making others happy. So, but sometimes it's really hard to constantly be on like that, because there are some people that just aren't about all that energy and all that, happy and laughter. So it's sometimes really hard to just navigate how to act around other people, because you have to adapt to situations sometimes. But I'm like you, I'm a Tigger, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
Right when you said that, I laughed, because I was like, that's what I say about myself all the time.
It's the Irish in me, Liz. My mom is older, and she went with a whole bunch of older women on a trip to Ireland, and there was one woman that was always griping about the food, everything, and the bus driver that was taking them was an affable Irishman. He's like, oh, my lady, what can I do to help you with your food? Oh, my lady, what can I do to help your seat? And she always griped about everything. Well, they went to Blarney Castle, and for an Irish person, kissing the Blarney Stone is basically like going to Mecca for a Muslim. And the day they go to Blarney Castle, it turns out the castle is closed. And this woman, she goes crazy. I'm suing this company. I'm getting my money back. And the bus driver says, oh, ma'am, don't worry. The way the legend's written is if you can't kiss the Blarney Stone, the next best thing is to kiss somebody who's kissed the Blarney Stone. And she says, and I imagine you have kissed the Blarney Stone. And he says, no, ma'am, but I have sat on it. And all of us have had those customer service moments.
I'm pretty sure that we all can say yes to that for sure. While you're telling that story, I did have another question come through. Do you still teach at all? A lot of your stories and what you've shared were teaching moments. So is that something that's still a part of your life right now?
It is part of my life. I'm not a teacher anymore. I train corporations, I train teachers, and then I have a company. I have the world's leading reading engagement program, and so I work with teachers and families around the world. And it's what I was sharing with you earlier, Liz. I'm working today. I did a Zoom with some schools in Ireland, a Zoom with some schools in Egypt, and a Zoom with the Amway organization in South Africa. So it's all over the place. But I do still, I'm a big believer in getting people to love reading, because I think I truly believe that the most avid readers are our most effective leaders.
Yeah, I mean, I can admit I don't read as often as I should or as I actually want to. You always say, I'm going to read a book. I'm going to go buy that book. I'm going to read it. And something always comes up. So I have to stop making that excuse, because
I'll solve that for you, Liz. And this is why I wrote the Read, Lead, and Succeed book, which everybody gets a copy of. I love presidential biographies. And one of my favorite biographies is called The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt by Edmund Morris. And that book, Teddy Roosevelt, when he was a kid, he was sick all the time, so he spent all this time reading. He was a speed reader, he had a photographic memory, and he could read in 8 languages. They say by the time he was 30 years old, he had read over 20,000 books. And so when I used to tell that to my little ones, they all go, wow. So I'm like, all right, so we all got to start reading, kids. So I read 10 books a day now. Many of them are scratch and sniff and pop up, but I do read 10 books a day. So if you want to impress people, Liz, you can tell people, oh, I read a book cover to cover last night. They're like, really? What was it about? It's about this little red hen. Very, very powerful book. So that counts.
Hey, a book is a book. It doesn't matter if it's fiction or nonfiction. If you are filling your head with more knowledge and learning something you didn't know before, or refreshing, it's always helpful and beneficial to yourself. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect. I don't see any more questions that have come in, just, thank yous. And I just have to personally say, even though you couldn't see me the whole time, I was laughing and smiling consistently in the presentation. Honestly, I didn't even have a negative thought in my head. It was a very engaging, very good, fabulous presentation. Some more thank yous, very nice thank yous. So I guess I'm not the only one here who got some great enjoyment out of this and laughter. So I definitely almost laughed a few times. So I was really happy about that.
Well, thank you, Liz. We need a lot more laughter. And folks,
absolutely.
There's serious things happening in the world right now. I shared with Liz, I'm not home right now. I'm in Tennessee. My mother actually, she got COVID and then she had a stroke. Fortunately, she's all right, but I'm here taking care of her. Who was the guy? Norman Cousins wrote a book several years ago. He got cancer and he didn't want to do chemotherapy. And so what he did is he watched a whole bunch of old Laurel and Hardy movies and Abbott and Costello, and he actually lost the cancer. And there's all kinds of, Harvard has done studies that have shown that people that surround themselves with like comedies and positive things, turn off the news, it's like an excuse. The news is something that people like to gripe about, but unless you can affect it, all it's going to do is negatively affect you. It's all, and now that I'm a parent, I never watch it because the first 3 minutes are this kid's missing, this kid's dead. I don't want that. That's what my wife always asks, why do you love sports? And I'm like, because at any moment, honey, something extraordinary can happen. Something positive.
That's true.
It's the truth. It's the truth. And my favorite, that's why I was bummed when the Olympics were canceled this past summer. I love the Olympics, and the horrible thing that you have to know about me, Liz, is that during the Olympics, I very rarely root for the United States, because who am I going to root for? The American with the Nikes with the microchip in their shoes, or the barefoot Sudanese refugee who just survived a civil war, and then they do the background. They're like, oh, to come back to Mobutu, you know, let's hear his story. He's like, I learned to run when I was running away from the bullets in my home country. I'm like, of course I'm rooting for that guy. It's an amazing story. But I really do want everybody, hopefully, I put a smile on all your faces, folks, but
I don't doubt it. If we could see it, I'm sure.
Good. And that's what I want, everybody. We got to take ourselves a whole lot less seriously. You know, I honestly don't think my wife even knows who the president of the United States is. I think all she does is watch comedies. And it's one of the things I love about her is who needs that negative energy inside of you. And so, folks, whenever you need anything, make sure you go to Liz or Wileen or come to me. I'll pump you up. I loved it because I used to teach in the hood with some kids that had some pretty rough environments. And it's amazing when you tell a person enough how much you believe in them. I realized I was blessed in my life. I had a lot of people that were encouraging me all the way. And I think that the human mind, we still don't know everything about it, but just those constant streams of, hey, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this.
Absolutely.
I think those things stick. And I think it's very simple psychology that Liz, you had shared before you went into hospitality, you were a psychology major. I'm like, well, that's a really smart major, because if I was a journalism major in my undergrad, if I had to do it all over again, and I don't have regrets for anything I've done, but if I had to do it over again, I would have taken business and psychology, because I don't care what you do in life, you're going to use business and psychology.
They always go hand in hand.
And
I should have done like a minor at least or something, because psychology is within everything you do no matter what. I still just get fascinated in general, where I'll watch documentaries or just random things where it just has to do with the brain and, you know, the study of why we do what we do. So it's still fascinating to me, even though I didn't make a career out of it.
Well, you don't need that piece of paper, Liz, to continue your education.
Exactly.
I'm a big believer in, I read a lot more now than I ever did when I was in college. I mean, I did the minimum I had to do in college, and now I just can't get enough. I'm always reading about 3 books at a time, and just like you, I'll watch those documentaries. I'm like, oh, I mean, I can watch Ken Burns, anything the guy's ever produced. I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. And so keep doing that, Liz, and all of you, keep it
Absolutely.
up.
I had one other small question. If
Great.
you have any reading recommendations, like maybe 1 or 2 books off the top of your head, maybe outside of even your own, because I'm sure people are going to get that free copy.
Man, that's a huge.
Somebody was asking if you had any other recommendations.
If you go to one of my websites, if you can type this in the chat for everybody.
I'm going to right now. Perfect.
Lazyreaders.com, lazyreaders.com. Make sure you put the S on the end, or else it sends you to a British porn site.
Lazy Readers.
Lazyreaders.com. Every month, I put together 10 book recommendations, 3 or 4 adult level, 3 or 4 young adult level, and 3 or 4 children's level books, all under 250 pages. So you have something you can read when you're stuck and bored. It just depends on what kind of book you're looking for. I mean, I've had people are constantly asking me for book recommendations. Just, I mean, if you want like something to make you laugh, one of the first books that made me laugh was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I was in tears.
I've read that one too.
Yeah, it's just a happy book. You know, I love, one of my favorite books growing up was To Kill a Mockingbird. It's weird, but it just shows you the character of Atticus Finch, just such integrity. I love reading about people like that. I mean, I read the Bible every day, it was interesting. Before COVID, I was speaking for a month in Egypt to a lot of Islamic schools. And now, like, my biggest audience right now is Islamic, because I gave a presentation. I said, oh, I was reading this book. Have any of you ever read the Quran? And they all laughed. I'm like, oh, well, then you know the story of when the Archangel Gabriel appears to Muhammad in the cave. What's his first instruction of Muhammad? Because in Islam, the first pillar of Islam is to read. And so I told the parents, I'm like, so not only should you get your kid reading, it's actually written in your sacred text that it's your duty to get kids reading. And so they're like, they started nodding, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is my audience. Gosh, I'm trying to think of some more books. Here's a good one for you, Liz. I apologize, I can't remember the author, but it's called Mindless Eating. And it's by Mindless Eating, and it's about behavioral psychology, about why people eat the way they do, and how you, like, there was a study done where they gave people different sizes of popcorns, and one of them was some people got a medium-sized popcorn and the other people got a large popcorn. And large popcorn, the popcorn was 5 months old. It was really stale, but people still ate the entire bucket. And it was showing that the eating patterns were based on that. I just found I love any kind of behavioral psychology. I can read things like that constantly. So whoever asked for book recommendations, if they email, I'll put together a specialized list just for you. Actually, we're talking hospitality industry, so I'll give you a great story. This is in the book, Read, Lead, and Succeed. There was this guy from a small town in eastern New Mexico called Connie, and he wanted to be a banker. And so he went to Texas looking to buy a bank, but everywhere he went, either the banks were too expensive or they weren't for sale. Well, finally, he went to the tiny town of Frisco or Cisco, Texas, which was a cow town gone crazy with oil. And he went to the bank, the local bank, and it was for sale. And the price was right. It was for $75,000. So he wired the absentee owner that he would pay $75,000 for the bank. Well, the absentee owner saw that he had a buyer. He said, oh, that was a mistake. It's actually $80,000. Well, Connie's like, no, I'm not doing that. And so he walks across the street to the Mobley Hotel, and the hotel is just packed with all these oil workers. And the guy behind the desk is like, sir, you can't loiter there. And now Connie's annoyed. He's like, not only can I not buy the bank, I can't even get a room for the night. And the guy behind the desk, oh, don't worry, these are oil workers. We have so many of them. We rent the rooms 3 times a day in 8-hour shifts. So the next shift will be soon. You can get a room then. And Connie's like, do you own this place? The guy's like, yeah, I could be out in the oil fields making real money. So Connie, he looked at the lobby filled with people. He offered the guy $50,000 for the hotel. And that was the day Connie Hilton decided, I'm not going to be a banker. I'm going to get into the hotel business. And so that's a story about paying attention to the opportunities around you all the time. So there's a good one for you, for everybody.
It's a great ending story. Just learn so much every day, right? You definitely learn something new every day. Oh, well, I want to thank you again for your time, Danny. I don't see any more questions or anything else popping through the woodworks here. So once again, thank you for your time. Stay safe and be well. I'm happy to hear your mother is doing well. Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
It's been a pleasure.
God bless.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.